Now what the hell's an NFT? Apparently cryptocurrency. Everyone's making so much money. Can you please explain what's an NFT? I said, what the hell?
Secretary Yellen, it was an honor to have you with us today.
Well, it was my pleasure, Professor. It's always nice to speak to aspiring economists.
Do we have time for one more question?
Hey, I don't have anywhere to be.
All right. Anyone have a question?
Live from New York, it's The Hash. Welcome to CoinDesk TV on Monday, March 29th. We're going to talk about all sorts of great stuff in crypto news and culture today. I'm going to kick it to Naomi to start us off. What do you got, Naomi?
Absolutely. Exciting news. So Visa has apparently processed a cryptocurrency payment directly to the Ethereum blockchain. And this is part of a new service that's going to be opening up to different partners later in the year. But the idea being that people will be able to use cryptocurrency, USD coin, to settle transactions instead of cash. And so this has been tested out by crypto.com. It's pretty exciting news. And it really just further brings home the point that this stuff is going mainstream and more people are jumping on board. Visa has been the most aggressive major credit card to be pushing cryptocurrency payments. So I'm excited to see where this is going. I'm going to throw this to the group. Zack, what are your thoughts on Visa processing a payment to the Ethereum blockchain? It's kind of a huge step there.
For sure. It's been pretty striking to see Visa accelerate its adventures in crypto land, right? They were briefly associated with Libra way back in June 2019. And since then, they've kind of gone whole hog on integrating crypto into their existing infrastructure. And I guess if you think about it, and this was kind of shared, I think, on the on First Mover today by Sam Bankman-Fried. If you think about Visa, it's really just a big, really fast permission blockchain network, right? It's not super dissimilar. They run a centralized ledger. They can handle tens of thousands of transactions a second. And the idea that they're adding USDC, which is obviously a fiat-backed stablecoin, to the payment rails that they already operate under is quite interesting. And will be interesting to see what further experimentation comes out of this. I think it's just kind of like pilot state at this point, if I'm understanding it correctly. But should this go into production, I think that'd be quite notable.
I think that's such a great point. A lot of people don't realize how our credit card payments, it's all, we live in this world of ones and zeros, and really they're just moving balance sheets around. They're not actually moving cash from one place to another. So it is really just like a cumbersome, slow moving, bad, expensive database, right? And so the fact that they're now thinking that stablecoins could help, speed up that process, maybe bring transaction fees down. I'm hoping that consumers will see a benefit of that as that moves forward. Ben, what are your thoughts on all of this?
Yeah, I think it's striking that we're seeing Visa move ahead at such seemingly kind of a rapid rate, particularly compared to other sort of credit card companies. So that's what struck me here is they're really, seemingly trying to get some first mover advantage in this space and really move the conversation forward. I'm really interested in the ways that they might ultimately be trying to not co-opt, that's too strong a word, but what's in it for them, right? Where's their profit going to be in all of this and kind of drawing people into the community. So I'll be looking at that. But yeah, they're really seeming moving faster than a lot of other credit card companies are even doing.
Yeah. And Jen, I have a question for you about the mainstream population. Visa is something that everyone probably has in their wallet. They have a card, they swipe it at the terminal. What's it going to take for people to want to use crypto at that terminal? Because it seems that if they already have the card, it's going to be a pretty easy switch to move into the crypto space. Do you think that this is going to help bring more people into crypto as they start to venture more into this world?
I mean, I think it's a great first step. Naomi, I actually want to throw a question back to you that will help us build on this conversation. I think when we hear this story, a lot of mainstream people don't understand the difference between USDC and USD. Do you want to just unpack that for us so we can kind of get our mainstream audience on the train with us?
For sure. So when you have fiat currencies, you have cryptocurrencies, right? And USD is issued by the federal government, and people use it every day. Now, the idea of a stable coin is that every time someone deposits one of these US dollars, they're going to mint a stable coin that sort of represents that amount of money, but it's on the blockchain. So now instead of, using your money in the traditional payment system, you can use that money in the cryptocurrency space. You can trade it easily between other cryptocurrencies. So essentially, stable coins like USDC, or we also have Tether, we have a bunch of different stable coins out there. They all represent the whatever currency they're representing. You can have it representing the yen, you can have it representing the Australian dollar. There are a bunch of them that you could represent. So USDC is representing the US dollar, and it's backed 1-to-1, which means that every time someone puts $1 in, 1 USDC is minted, and they can use that in the crypto space. So it's a really cool tool that was first conceptualized as this way to bridge the gap between crypto and the fiat world. And it's actually interesting. I think it was first conceived of by people as sort of a tax route around, because initially people didn't think that trading in between cryptocurrencies was going to be a taxable event. So they thought, well, if we just hedge it by putting it in something that represents US dollars, we don't have to bring it out of the crypto space back into traditional finance. We'll keep it in there. It'll be easier for us. Obviously, that's not the case. Every time you transact into any other, between any currency, it's going to be a taxable event with crypto. But it still has proven to be super useful that people don't have to go the cumbersome route of getting your money in and out of crypto. You can just keep it in crypto, and less transaction fees and things like that with exchanges. So it's a pretty cool tool. Will, are you gonna start using Visa and these credit cards with crypto?
No, I'm going to take a different approach to what this news represents, actually, because I think. No. No, I think like it's still going to be cheaper to use Visa on Visa's database no matter what. I think this is a great way for Visa to kind of circle the wagons around the crypto market. So it's really hard to get money off of an exchange back into your own personal wallet. So if I'm trading on Coinbase or whatever, there's a bunch of steps to be able to get that money off. And the degree of difficulty becomes even greater the farther you go out from US regulated exchanges. If I'm on Binance or FTX or anything that's not approved by the US, it becomes very difficult to get your money back in your wallet. So I think Visa integrating USD coin makes it necessarily easier for crypto traders to offboard, and then Visa gets a cut of that money. So it's a great way for them to kind of get into the crypto trading game, the offboarding and onboarding of dollars into that system. I think this is bullish for people who need to move a lot of money on the cheap. So if you're moving $100,000 plus and you don't want to use Visa and you don't have to have days of wait times, the ACH wire or any other large transfer mechanism, this is great. But I don't see it being used in like a Visa wallet anytime soon, just because you have like transaction fees and there's a lot of other high costs that you have to think about when you're talking about a Visa transaction, which is just like pennies right now just to use your normal card to get coffee. But if you're using a stable coin, you'd be like probably paying more in fees than your coffee is worth.
Well, it depends on the chain. On Ethereum, for sure. That makes absolutely no sense to me making transactions
Tron, you're
there.
pretty good, right? Tron, you're pretty good.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So there are, different cryptos is actually way cheaper than the credit card fees to use crypto. And definitely for merchants to accept crypto, because on the other side of things, it costs a huge amount. Really, it eats into businesses' profit margin when they're paying several percent in fees. So definitely I could see a push coming from the merchant side. We did see that earlier, but it just stopped. And it didn't go much further than that. But we are starting to see that build back up again now with a lot of momentum. So I'm excited to see what happens there if maybe the merchant push comes back in and pushes users to start using it. Zach, what are your thoughts here?
I was just going to say, just to wrap it up, I mean, this may evolve beyond Ethereum at some point, right? USDC lives on other chains as well.
For sure.
And should there be other high throughput solutions where Visa might want to dabble in those realms as well, it could become more attractive, I think, to consumers.
Absolutely. I think we're going to change track. Ben, what's going on with this COVID passport thing? I don't know.
Yeah. So essentially, New York has now launched its COVID-19, passport with the Excelsior app, which is a blockchain-based product from IBM. And the idea is that, this is a tool that would show, whether you were negative for COVID through a PCR test or, kind of serve as a digital version of that document card that everybody's kind of showing off right now once they get immunized. So there are two parts to this, I think. One is the blockchain aspect, and two is the sort of digital privacy aspect. And there's been a whole lot of debates raging around this, since last March when these ideas first started getting iterated upon. But Will, I want to get your thoughts on this initially. What do you think?
I hate this, just to be blunt. I think that so just looking at like the COVID phenomenon itself, I'm pretty hopeful. I mean, obviously don't have a degree in any of this, but I've looked at some stats this morning. I think nearly 25% of 65 plus people in the US are vaccinated, and then a large percent of those people have already had COVID or gone through it. So I think we're on the way down. I mean, you always have to say that with your fingers crossed. But then I also saw that you can correct me if I'm wrong there. But I do think
cases have been rising really rapidly in the US again too over the last few weeks. It's looking like we had started going down, but now with the variants, it's coming up. So.
Yeah. So you always have to say with your fingers crossed because the data changes day by day, right? That's just how all these things work. But I think like at the bottom of the fundamental issue here, there's a few things going on. First of all, that government is terrible with privacy, as you know, Ben. Like as you've been covering anything to do with government, they always lose your data. You're always exposed to outside forces that can use it, and that introduces complications that may be worse than introducing this idea of having some sort of passport to track immunizations. Like if there was a system for you just like having a card in your wallet and carrying that around to show that you've been immunized, and then there's less of a chance of your data being leaked, that might be a better alternative. But to me, this just comes across as like another hatched together job of getting a tech solution for a social problem. And I don't see it working very well. I mean, blockchain based solutions don't work for very many things outside of money. So I don't really understand the purpose of this outside, like from a tech standpoint, just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
I think when people hear...
No, Jen, jump in here.
I think when people hear blockchain, they automatically, well, a mainstream audience at least, they automatically think it's safer and your records are going to be stored in a way that is maybe safer than other solutions on the market. But I want to kind of pull this back to storing health records on a blockchain. What are the kind of privacy concerns there for you, Ben?
I mean, this is kind of the issue. You know, there's been a lot of kind of combating forces around whether blockchain in this sense is just a buzzword, you know, because the security of these things is sort of questions that go way beyond blockchain, right? It's who's handling it, who has access to it. The idea of private-public partnerships, particularly around any sort of like COVID passport, are really, really tricky and complicated. There was a big push in the EU early on with two kind of bodies of actors, one of which was pushing for an incredibly decentralized model of storing this information, which means that, you know, it would be stored locally. It would not be stored on a centralized server that could be, you know, sort of co-opted or used or accessed in a sort of way that a decentralized, you know, model wouldn't allow, or a centralized model where, you know, governments have access to all this information. It's centrally stored. It's a little easier to access in some of these ways, but that also creates a whole host of other questions. So there's just a whole cascade of complications here. And I've been covering this for the last year, so I have all of these different thoughts around it. But, you know, there's also the matter that this is New York's solution. Other states have other solutions. It's unclear how these things are going to talk to each other or if they will. And so to me, this is just one example of, you know, kind of bad messaging around this in some ways, because it doesn't answer some of these really foundational questions, but also a larger societal debate that's going on around privacy in COVID-19 right now.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So there were lots of proposals early on, like especially when we're talking about tracking devices and all this kind of stuff, for completely private ways to do this. It is absolutely possible. We have things called zero knowledge proofs. There are definitely ways that this information, like we could have had something similar, but we could have protected privacy. And I agree with Will there. You know, you get the government involved and it's just a hatchet job and it's just done terribly, and people's data instead is completely vulnerable as a result. So I had a bunch of friends actually working on this solution really early on, and they weren't allowed to. So it's not just that there wasn't the knowledge or the talent out there doing this. They didn't have access to the right APIs. They couldn't get permission from the government to do this. It took a tremendous amount of bureaucracy to get that permission, to get the right licenses so that you could access the data and all of this. So people were trying their hardest to work on better solutions, and instead bureaucracy came in and stopped it. So that's the story at the end of the day, is that we end up with this terrible solution and we could have had something much better. And that tends to be the story a lot of the time.
Let us take a break and change gears, because we are going to go from bureaucracy to the world of SNL, in which NFTs were featured prominently on SNL this weekend. So we're going to talk about that, but you got to stick with us through the break, and we'll be back in a second. All right, bye.
Do we have time for one more question? Hey, I don't have anywhere to be. All right.
Hello and welcome back to The Hash, where we bring you the latest and greatest in crypto, culture, and satire. Now, if you're still wondering what the hell an NFT is, Pete Davidson and the crew at SNL broke it down for us on the weekend. Let's take a look.
Now what the hell's an NFT? Apparently cryptocurrency. Everyone's making so much money. Can you please explain what's an NFT? I said, what the hell's an NFT? It's like real life Monopoly. Everyone is doing it like Gronkowski. Can you please help me make an NFT? Non-fungible. Use a rhyme for the eating lunchable. No pics of Colin Joseph's face. Very punchable. Digital images. Digimon doing scrimmages. Or a pick of a note with the Nintendo Switch. Dictionary with the pick of Fat Jerry. I made it last night and now I got $3,000.
So much fun. I'm still laughing about that. All right. So I don't know. Did you guys all get a chance to look at the full 3-minute clip on the weekend?
Yeah.
And what did you think?
Seemed pretty accurate. A lot of confusion, a lot of memes, a lot of words thrown around, which is basically what an NFT is. So I'm glad we got that cleared up, and thank you, Saturday Night Live.
Okay. I guess my bigger question here is the fact that SNL is covering NFTs. What does that guys tell you? Are NFTs going more mainstream, or is this the signal of a bubble? I know we talk about this all the time, but I really didn't expect to see this on SNL on the weekend.
I think that NFTs are really such an interesting gateway into crypto. Like, I keep thinking about all the waves people would get involved with crypto. I'm like the merchant adoption and all of the remittances and all of these things that never really happened. And then suddenly you get like artwork, and all these artists pile on, and they all, because they understand art, they know how to draw, and there are pretty simple platforms out there where you're like, you could draw and you might potentially make money. And so now you have all these like places like Saturday Night Live talking about this. I think that it's a very interesting gateway that is like aiming itself at the creative types. And it's just, I don't know, it's kind of cool. Like when you deal with the other side of the tech, it's kind of boring and dry, and I can understand why it's not appealing to the mainstream people. When you're talking about NFTs, you're dealing with artwork and fun, gimmicky things and meme culture and internet culture. So I do think that it's just more approachable to a lot of people. But throw on top of that people are making a ton of money. People are losing a ton of money too. Don't get me wrong. So don't just dive in. But I do think it's been an interesting gateway. Zach, what's your thoughts on like the NFT movement? When is this going to pop? Because we know it's going to pop eventually.
I just have this feeling that like the party's over. I don't know. Like I feel like we have like these subsequent like tops, and this may be like the top. And so I guess like to your point, like people are trying to get involved in this thing because it's fun, it's cool. You have a little bit of art, and hey, you might make some money when you try to sell it. Whether that's a digital basketball card or a cool thing that you saw on Rarible or whatever. And it sort of feels like I'm a little bit worried about those folks not necessarily getting the upside of that trade in the end, right? Like the moment I think of this like lavishness and excitement, around NBA Top Shot, around other platforms, is definitely feels like it's waning. I don't know if it's like because we're in the eye of the storm, but it sort of feels like, okay, we've hit the top of the mountain and it's downhill from here. And that's probably a bad place to be for a lot of like new investors who might come away from this feeling pretty gypped. You got into the ICO bubble at the very end of that hype cycle. You probably felt pretty salty for like a few years before you were like, oh, okay, crypto. I remember about this crypto thing. So I think there is a risk of like us recreating that dynamic alongside this like surging and maybe waning NFT mania now. But I don't know. It just keeps coming. I don't know. I don't really know what to take, and I don't know what to make of it, but I'll toss it to Ben. He's probably got something smart to say.
I mean, well, yeah, like, I guess to me, like my first thought was like SNL is not a first mover in the comedy space. Generally, they're pretty late to things often. And so to me, the fact that they're talking about this now kind of shows like maybe the peak was a few weeks ago, just for them to get caught up, learn what it was, and then write a skit about it and then program it. So I don't think it's the most reliable data point. Sure, I guess it's like educational in some ways, but I think to my concern, this is a little bit like people trying to buy into Bitcoin at like 60,000 or something like that, and then getting bummed out when it like kind of settles back down to 50,000 or something like that. As in people buying in at the top and then being upset when it doesn't go, they look around and people are talking about all the wild speculation and they see these like numbers going around of like, 69 million or like the Times column being sold for $500,000. And they're like, wait, I'm going to make that money. And then when that is not met, it can kind of turn them off of this idea, particularly when we're talking about it like an NFT as a cryptocurrency, as the SNL skit did. It could turn them off of this idea altogether. So that's kind of how I'm feeling in regards to this skit. I just don't think that SNL's comedic takes are the most reliable of the bleeding edge of what's out there in the world.
Yeah, they're not usually the funniest either. I'm not a huge fan of this now. I'm going to be honest. But I actually enjoyed this one. I don't know whether that's just because it kind of hit my nerd niche, but I enjoyed it.
I will say it was not poorly done. It was done pretty well. I don't know. Have we had South Park NFT take yet? I don't think so.
I don't know. That's a great question. I want to see what they do because I like South Park's takes.
All right, we're moving on to Will. Will, what do you got? It's enough.
Yeah, we'll move on from frothy NFTs to Square, which is, we're talking about the heavy hitter stuff with my segment. None of this NFT stuff, okay? I'm talking about Bitcoin here. Yeah, no frothiness. Respectable coins only. So the CFO of Square says that more companies need to get on board with putting Bitcoin into their Treasury Reserve asset allocations. She said that it's just becoming an asset class that anyone can hold. Quote, there's absolutely a case for every balance sheet to have Bitcoin on it, which of course we've seen a lot of companies do, including Tesla, and then even some of the more conservative companies like Mass Mutual. So I'm going to, of course, I think everyone can guess where I'm throwing this over to Zack, who's been editing a lot of these scoops from Allison. Oh yeah, you know it. So what do you think about this? Do you think is this just kind of shilling your own bag, or is this really where everything's going? Or are we kind of topping out? It's been a few weeks since we've heard any big names putting Bitcoin into their Treasury Reserve.
Yeah, they're just waiting for the NFT cycle to die down, and then they'll come back with a vengeance. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think this is a continuation of a trend. It's, Square has really taken the lead here in trying to document its own process and explicitly stating to others that here's how you can do it. I think last fall when they made that first $50 million Bitcoin buy, sort of quietly, they also released like a white paper for how other corporates could do something similar. So the fact that they're saying this and sort of, I think, raising awareness around it suggests that they're still obviously interested in that mission. As to whether or not this, portends the next big corporate treasury announcement, I have no idea, but it's certainly something that apparently more and more CFOs are considering. So for Square to trot out its CFO to make this announcement is certainly notable.
For sure. I think it's exciting as well. I agree with you, Zack, that the fact that they kind of do have this mission to get people into crypto, I think is awesome. They have a platform that has a lot of viewers, and so they can reach a lot of people. So people take them seriously in terms of looking at financials. So I hope that this does help other people look into crypto. That being said, I'm not sure I agree that their statement's so strong. Like, there's absolutely a case for all balance sheets to have Bitcoin. I'm not sure I agree with that. Obviously, companies are going to have to look at their own balance sheets and determine their risk profile. Bitcoin is very volatile. I personally think that it's great for people to have this on, but for sure, make sure that you understand the risks involved and don't just think that this is a sure thing and this is digital gold, because we don't see the volatility in gold that we see in Bitcoin right now, and it may take a while for that to even out, if it does at all. We'll have to see what happens there. I presume it will, but we really can't be sure. Jen,
Naomi, where's your appetite for the pump? Sorry. Come on.
I know. I just
pump it,
I don't
Naomi,
know.
Pump it.
Exactly.
I'm trying to be even it out. Everyone is just so everyone do this thing. It's like NFT mania, right? Like, everyone do a thing. Spend the $700 transaction fee. It'll be worth it. It's like, will it though? Be careful, guys. I'm excited about it. I'm excited about more companies getting involved. I'm excited about this global phenomenon that is decentralized money. I think it's wonderful. I think it's a revolution. I think it leads to more financial sovereignty. But I also am concerned about businesses managing their risk profile appropriately.
Yeah, I think just briefly, I want to jump in and say, the reason I was joking there is that the people that are most vocal about this are also the people that stand to benefit a lot from it too. Like MicroStrategy and Square. If every corporate actor is putting this on their balance sheet, Bitcoin's going to continue to rise and Square's investment in it is going to look even smarter. So I think it's important to just keep that in mind as we're talking about some of these things. And I will say though, something that jumped out to me from this report is that, they said we're going to hold on to this asset long term. They're going to just kind of hodl and keep it there and wait for it to grow. So that to me was interesting, just because it's one more kind of indicator of where their thought around this is in terms of their own behavior.
I love that we're hearing from a female minority CFO. I think a lot of the CFOs that we've heard from in the past about Bitcoin have kind of all looked the same. And I think this is just really great. She may influence people who didn't think about holding Bitcoin on the balance sheet to think about that, and even individual investors who maybe look and sound like her and came from a similar background to start looking into it. So that's kind of what was exciting to me about the story.
It's very similar to Tesla coming out and saying that they will hold Bitcoin and not transfer it into crypto as well. Like it's just a similar kind of movement towards like long-term prospects of this, which is pretty exciting and sort of in line with where I think of the crypto as well. But let's change tracks there. Zack, what do we got?
Let's get out of Bitcoin. Let's go to Cosmos, and we'll talk about the long-term prospects of blockchain interoperability. Cosmos today, holders of the Atom token voted overwhelmingly. This was my favorite stat from this story. The final vote for kicking on the inter-blockchain communication protocol was 112 million tokens to a mere 75 tokens. So the people have spoken. The ability to send different assets across distinct blockchains that are all written on the same underlying code is now live. And so that's potentially really important as big projects start to emerge out of the Cosmos ecosystem. So I'm going to throw this to Will, who I know has been looking at blockchain interoperability for a while now. Give me the rundown on Cosmos. You wrote, I think last December, about Cosmos and the dream of anti-maximalism. And that dream, I guess, is one step closer to reality as of today.
Yeah, IBC is really interesting. And I think a lot of other blockchains are actually, they're planning their future progress based on if IBC works out. So for example, Ethereum is really, there's a lot of Ethereum people, including Vitalik, who are looking at IBC and saying, this is a way for Ethereum to scale. This is a way for Ethereum to keep living on in different ways. And I know a lot of Ethereum developers and a lot of Ethereum bag holders are also wanting IBC to work, which is interesting when you look at how maximalism has taken over in different tribes of crypto. Of course, we have like Bitcoin maximalists who are like Bitcoin and Bitcoin only, and then we have Ethereum maximalists who are like Ethereum and Ethereum only. But there's the conversation is much more textured than that, and there's a lot more chains in the works that are going to work underneath all these other blockchains that most investors are familiar with right now. So Polkadot is another one out there. I think Thorchain is one that's kind of coming up, though that might be for more for DeFi protocols. But what these chains do is allow you to move from one asset from one chain to another chain and allow those two chains to talk with each other. And that increases capital efficiency. It allows investors from one side of the blockchain world to contact investors on the other side of the blockchain world. So in the end, it just kind of meshes everything really sweetly, which is what the ecosystem needs to grow and scale if there's going to be this multi-chain future, as people like to talk about. So Naomi, I feel like you've kind of dug into a few of these. Have you had anybody from Cosmos on your show or talked with anybody about this protocol launching?
So not Cosmos, but you mentioned just their Thorchain rune. So I'll be interviewing someone soon about that. They're obviously launching in, I think, like a couple of weeks with like a similar idea, this whole idea of bringing all these coins together. And it is funny, you know, we mentioned on the show the other day how there's been lots of talks about these protocols that can bring people together. It's like we have all these different types of currencies. We'll create one to bring them all together. And what you end up is all those different types of currencies plus another type of currency. And so we're going to have like Cosmos, we're going to have, you know, the rune token on Thorchain. We're going to have lots of different protocols that do bring this together. But I think it's a necessary step and it's absolutely where this is going. I always foresaw a future in crypto where you would use your wallet and maybe you're not aware of which crypto you're using. Maybe there's an algorithm that's deciding what's most advantageous at the time and it's seamlessly integrated between all these different chains on your behalf. So that's a world that I can definitely see as possible and is imminent now that we've got all these launches. So it's pretty exciting to me. Ben, what's your take on all this?
Yeah, I think this is really, really interesting. I think, Will, you're spot on when you're saying like this is what the ecosystem needs to kind of grow and continue to develop in such a way. Like you can't just have sort of like islands of blockchains just out there sort of existing in isolation. So I think this will be really interesting to continue to watch, you know, kind of looking at the potential darker side as I always do. You know, I'm really curious to see what sort of vulnerabilities or exploits might emerge because of this. And something I'm going to be tracking kind of this week to see what unexpected things might crop up, unfortunately, because when you do roll out, you know, sort of large upgrades like this, there is a bit of a vetting by demand process.
Yeah, and I'll just add. Sorry, go ahead, Zack.
I was just going to say, like,
It's always you two.
TV.
It's always you two. There's no
You go.
chemistry between you guys.
All right, I just want to
guys.
table set. So there's quite a few interesting projects that are built like on Tendermint Core. So we're talking about Binance Smart Chain. We're talking about the Crypto.com chain. We're talking about Terra, which recently rolled out some really interesting DeFi products. So situating this in the context of projects that already exist gets pretty interesting, right? You know, all of a sudden, like PancakeSwap or whatever, it can talk to Anchor on Terra, and that type of cross-chain composability is something that we haven't seen much of. So I just wanted to prime the pump there for you, Naomi, and now you can do your thing.
Thank you, Zach. I'm going to take over seamlessly and not even talk over you. So I think, like, just adding on to what Ben was saying about the islands of different chains working in isolation from each other. And really, at the moment, I mean, DeFi, we've started to see change this, but traditionally we've just had centralized exchange being the talking points and the exchange points for all of these chains to interoperate. And when you have centralized entities like that, it just puts such a weakness on the system, a system that's meant to be uncensorable and unstoppable and, you know, financial freedom and all of this. When you have these central points, it really does, you know, throw a spanner in the works. So the fact that now we're creating decentralized protocols that could do this for us is really, really cool and exciting.
Well, I'll continue that thought. I didn't want to stop. I'll pick it up. You know, in conjunction with, you know, the IBC launch, Tendermint Labs, which is one of the companies behind the software that undergirds the whole system, just announced that they're going to do this big venture fund. I think it's $20 million to basically fund projects that are bringing people into this network. They shared something really interesting that I thought, you know, the way that Consensus Ventures supports Ethereum, they want to be that for the Cosmos ecosystem, right? So Consensus famously is this Brooklyn conglomerate that sort of is this magic Ethereum workshop that's had its ups and downs over the years, but has funded a lot of key pieces of infrastructure in Ethereum land. So Tendermint, the team, is putting some money up to sort of play a similar role in funding Terra and some other interesting projects that, you know, again, bring users, assets, and excitement to these networks. So there's momentum growing around it, and Will put his finger up. So I'm going to say, Will, what do you got?
Well, before we close, I just want to know how interesting it is that Cosmos almost fell apart last year, and we had some great stories documenting that, where there was a lot of political pressure and aggression within the Cosmos ecosystem between like the development hubs and like the venture firms and all these projects that are building out applications on Cosmos. And somehow they like squeaked out a win, and it's happening. Like IBC happened, and I think a lot of people were like, "Oh, it's like another failed crypto project," but it worked. So good for them.
And there's strange personal dramas are in that reporting suite. So if you do get a chance to check it out, please do. I think that's going to wrap it up for the Hash today. It's Monday. Happy Monday, folks. We're going to do it again tomorrow. Tomorrow's Tuesday, I'm told. And then we'll be back here on Wednesday, and then even on Thursday and Friday. So this is your daily rundown of crypto news and culture. I'm Zach. That's Naomi. There's Ben. There's Jen. There's Will. Stick around at CoinDesk TV, 3 p.m. All about Bitcoin. Bye.
See you later.